I'm Bethany.
And I'm Lauren.
Welcome to the Healing Collective podcast, where we explore the paradox of healing at the individual and the collective level.
Join us as we invite guests to share their personal paths to freedom. What are we even going to talk about?
I don't know.
Well, I have ideas.
We kind of already started the podcast.
Yeah,
this is how it begins. Yeah.
Well, I was thinking about Gentzy and getting the gang back together here, and like one of the things that I've been tracking, like when I just have been watching Gentzy and his path and stuff, because we've been able to be in groups together where we're sort of like talking a lot about what's going on in our lives and processing stuff and learning stuff together. We did the coaches program together with Conscious Leadership Group, and one of the things I always noticed my attention go to in a really intense way, like really catching my attention, is your navigation of your like relationship with your ex-wife, and like not just a co-parenting relationship, because that's how I think about, and I think that's how so many people think about it, like, oh, we have kids, so I have to have a relationship with this person for this express purpose, and it becomes this obligation. And I find I'm in my own process around all of that. You have a relationship with your ex-wife, an intentional relationship where you do parts of life together. And
you're moving cross country together.
And well, I wanted to go there. Yeah. So I asked Gentzy about the move. So you're Chicago based right now. So can you tell us a little bit what's going on?
Yeah. So I'm in Chicago now. And my ex-wife, Lori, I'll just call her Lori from now on. That's who she is. And she is out in Bend, Oregon with our 4 kids. And I will be joining them at the beginning of August. So just back here in Chicago, kind of wrapping things up. Our son, Brennan, is 18, and he'll be going to college in Washington State at Whitman College. And really, that was the impetus for us even considering a move. So to kind of back up a little bit, Brennan lived with me in Chicago. Lori lived with the girls, our 3 girls, Zoe, who's 15, Ava, who's 12, and Hazel, who is 9. And she lived 2 hours south of Chicago in Champaign, and we did a lot of back and forth stuff. And she wanted to be there. I wanted to be in Chicago, and that's just kind of the arrangement that we figured out. The pandemic occurred and kind of threw everything up. And, by the way, the pandemic began on March 13th, which was also my last day working for the company that I'd been working at for 4.5 years in Chicago.
Wow.
And so it was just like massive disruption, lots of back and forth. And then kind of with an eye towards Brennan going to college, and what are we going to do then? And about that time, like the concept of home, it's been kind of flipped inside out over the past 5 years, but it got really intense with me of what is home? What makes home? Where is home? And just started this conversation between Lori and I of, is home going to be Chicago? Is home going to be Champaign? Are we going to do some hybrid thing? And then about 6 months ago, we were like, what if home is like someplace we've never even imagined? Like, what if it's someplace completely different? And about this time, Brennan started to get really serious about going to school out west. And we were like, there's places we could live, out east. We looked at Asheville, North Carolina, Austin, Texas, Colorado. All these things were places were kind of in play. And we visited some of them, some we were familiar with. And when he finally decided that he was going to go to school in Washington, we were like, what about Oregon? And when Lori and Brennan had done a college trip, they kind of fell in love with the state of Oregon. And I have a few friends in Bend and had kind of heard about it. And it'd been, kind of this, kind of sleepy little resort town that used to be a timber town. Now it's pretty fun. And 40% of the population there works remotely. And so we just, Lori went out there and she said, this place is incredible. My partner, Kristen, who lives here in Chicago as well, went out and visited a few weeks later, said this place is incredible. And I didn't go out there and said, great, let's go.
Well, have you been there at all? Wait, have you been there?
I finally went out. I needed to get a car. We have 2 cars here in Chicago, so I wanted to get one out so we didn't have to drive them both across country and a moving truck. And so I drove out there over July 4th and dropped off the car. And literally the moment like I pulled into the town, it was like home.
Wow.
Well, you're making it sound a lot more logical. I mean, the Cliff Notes version was Gentzy, his ex-wife, their kids, and his girlfriend are all moving to Bend together. And I was like, that is so badass. Like finding paths for alignment when there's so many possibilities for drama and like for feelings and like tension, like just that you've created that. It's my attention always goes to it, and I'm constantly getting lessons about like how post-marriage relationships have the potential to work and be, and it's inspiring to me.
Oh, thank you. And it's hard, and it's messy. And I think two quips I'll share, and one of them was the first podcast that the two of you did, and Lauren, I think you were talking about highest order commitments. And this is, me paraphrasing, but essentially it was like, what's the highest order commitment? And then you realize everything is in service of that. And it doesn't mean that the things that are in service of that are going to be easy. Like there's going to be suffering, there's going to be this and that. But if this is my highest order commitment, then this is it. And I'll never forget, I was listening to that podcast, two of you know this, and I was in Hawaii with Lori and the kids.
Yeah.
And we had we'd had tension the night before to the point where Lori and we were in open conflict in front of the kids. And I was pissed. Like I was like, we're going on this vacation. Everybody's going to get along because that's kind of what I like. And then this conflict occurred, and and the next day we sat everybody down. We had a conversation about why we were in conflict, and that we're committed to talking through those things and not hiding from it. It ended up being really beautiful, but hard. And when I was listening to that podcast, I just thought my highest order commitment is, and always has been, the evidence is there. Like it was kind of this aha, and I'd never thought about it like this, to create incredible, magical, fun experiences for my family.
Mm-hmm.
Everything else just kind of like my heart opens around that. Like my work opens around that. Everything kind of feeds into that. And when you were talking about that on the podcast, it was just like, oh yeah, that's what it is. And Lori is my family. And, I can put all kinds of labels on it of like, yeah, we're untangling 17 years of marriage and codependence, blah, 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 blah. Like that, I can go down that road and be open to that and find the truths in that. And underneath all of it is she's family, and I love her. And, I think most of the time she loves me. And we are committed not just to our kids, but to this thing that we call family. And it is shifted in unimaginable ways and in beautiful ways. And, and it's hard sometimes. And if that's the highest order commitment, as long as Lori is included within that family, then that's what we're going to do. So that's number one. Number two, so Lori and I got divorced in 2018. 2 months later, she was engaged, and 3 months later, she was married. That marriage ended 4 months after they were married, and Lori went to do some energy work, and she had all kinds of stuff going on, and she said, "What about my ex-husband? Can you sense anything about my ex-husband?" And the energy worker said, "Yeah, he's here, but it doesn't feel like there's anything to work through." To our Hansel and Gretel. I was just like, oh. And that's actually it, that like resonates with me. There's I think almost a sibling relationship that the two of us feel. We've known each other since we were 12. We dated since we were 17. We got married at 21, kids at 23. We've grown up together, and there's beauty in that. And part of I think the untangling was we didn't know who we were apart from one another, and there was a need to find that independence. And for us, that path was divorce. I don't think it is for everybody. It doesn't have to be that way, but it was for us. What's up, Talon?
He can't hear you. They're saying hi to you. He said hi.
Uh,
I have like
Thank you.
10 reflections on what you just said.
yeah, and that's the way. And I think, with Hansel and Gretel too, it's kind of like this scary like journey and leaving breadcrumbs along the way. And I think the whole story has a lot of similarity to the journey Lori and I have been on, the journey we're on now, and what I anticipate will be the journey that we have going forward. Yeah.
And I like that Hansel and Gretel are both kind of weird names people don't hear much, and so is yours, and it almost sounds like a combination of those two words gets you your name being Gentzy.
That's a great catch. I hadn't even thought about that, but you're absolutely right.
Well, your daughter's name is Hazel. Your name is Gentzy. I don't know. There's just some something.
Something's going on there.
And my middle name is Hems. So you throw that into the mix. Hems.
Wow. What a name. What a name. Well, there's several things that you said that I'm so interested in, and we didn't maybe properly introduce you, so I want to give you the opportunity to do that. But the thing that I want to stamp before we move on from that is the fact that you're comfortable with open conflict, the fact that you are going to say what's happening and say what your experience is, and that your family has attuned itself to be yeah, it's not just going to be perfect and sunny all the time. My story about that is that's part of what allows you guys to create the freedom to have good relationships, because I think, I don't know, when I think about my ex-husband, I think it has to be nice, and how can we not have hurt feelings about things, and how can we make all that work, and probably putting a lot of pressure on a certain idea of what that relationship should be or what I would want it to be maybe is too controlling of a way to be with it, and not, I think the being flexible and available for the fact that conflict is going to happen, and that acknowledge that as part of a healthy relationship, and having it worked into the protocols of how you choose to be with each other. It sounds like there's probably a lot of freedom in that.
Yeah, and unfamiliarity. I'm an Enneagram type 7. Lori is an Enneagram type 9. When we are happy and things are going well, we don't want conflict. And in our marriage, we didn't have a whole lot. In fact, it was avoided. I think similar to what you just described, Bethany, of this is new muscle for us, and to build it post marriage, all kinds of other steps, and I think tools that it's required. And had I not kind of been engaged in kind of digging deep into my soul, understanding what my responsibility was in the ending of the marriage and the dissolution of that kind of formal arrangement, the heartbreak that my decisions co-created, the ways that I had been heartbroken, repeatedly throughout my marriage without even really knowing it. I can be pretty blind to my own discomfort. And understanding when it's there, and realizing that discomfort can often lead to conflict, because I want to get back to a state of comfort, and I'm going to have to state some needs. I'm going to have to, claim some preferences, and sometimes take a position. That is radically new muscle for me. And Lori too.
And I assume any new partners that you guys are involving in the mix of all of that, because that's a lot of intentionality around not a primary relationship. So girlfriends and boyfriends getting in the mix of all that, it's not traditional. And I think that's what I was kind of paying Gentzy an appreciation around, braving this new territory of things that he's always doing something that I've never seen people do before, that I don't see very commonly. Seeming to do it pretty well, pretty functionally. And so, I don't know, I think that's
I just do feel like I need to add, as much as that is all true, and I'm so inspired by your journey with that. I am also actually more grateful that I was there when it started unwinding, because, Gentzy and I were in a forum. That's where we met. And I mean, I just, Jim has that one couch that looks like a psychiatrist couch or whatever. And I just remember this dark, seedy man with a small ponytail, crying and depressed on that couch, and And like, I have this one memory of like Lori spitting on a brownie. Is that a real thing? That is, I'm like, I just, and why I think this is important is because consistently, like when I went to Bodhi, Conscious Leadership, all these places, we see the outcome of people's work and their decision, and we're like, oh, I want that. And I'm going to use these tools to get there. And it is a fucking train wreck process. And I don't think that we're honest about that. And then I think when people start that journey, they're like, I'm doing something wrong because that person looks like they're thriving. And that's not what's happening in this process for me.
So good. Thank you, Lauren, as you always do, bringing me back down to and it's so true. And it's good for me to be, not only reminded of that, but also to honor that as part of the process. I can tell a really good story. Really can. I mean, I can look back and kind of pull the pieces out and be like, hey, and the reality is that, the past 5 years have been an absolute train wreck, like absolute train wreck, like doing things I never thought I would do, feeling things I'd never thought I'd do. And what you said, depression, a word that I have such an aversion to, and it probably hasn't even been, within the last 6 months is when I've said, I get depressed. And that period of time was a period of depression for me. And it's not pretty. It's not pretty. And there's you don't know, well, let me personalize it. I didn't know where I was going. I didn't know where it ended. There was despair. There was, this
shame. I feel like there's a lot of shame about like your impact on your family and your kids.
Yeah, exactly. How's this all going to play out? I'm responsible for these people. Being a dad looked a certain way to me. Being a partner looked a certain way to me. Being a good person, I had very, very well defined rules around what a good person does and what a bad person does. And, I felt like a bad person most of the time. So yeah, it's, it's not pretty. And I think that there's no way to bypass it, and I think that's something that I feel like is a common theme on the podcast, which I love. It's just like, hey, whoa. This is not a copy and paste. In fact, that awakening consciousness, whatever you want to call it, that's actually what this is all about. That's why there's been disillusionment with religion and other things that we've put our trust in. Now I'm getting on a soapbox, but just to go back and I think echo everything that you just said, Lauren. Yeah, I mean, I was a wreck. I was an absolute wreck.
We like soapboxes. I do anyway.
Like
so just
too.
Yeah, I know that. Podcast enough.
But something that I've really been reflecting on, because I want to say that my unravel has only happened once, but I'm constantly having unravels. And this last year was like, I thought I had unraveled and I'm like, oh no, there's a whole nother level of unravel available. That's great to know. But something that I've reflected on is like that life unravels to get in right relationship. And there's a right relationship. And I keep saying, how do I define right relationship? And it's really hard, but it's like, I'm trying to translate it. It's like, there is some way that the design can fit together that is in highest service for all and highest service for like source. And when we're out of right relationship with ourselves, with our path, with our integrity, there's all, with the earth, like just drama and energetic mess happens. And so I make up that everything blew up and it's reorganizing in right relationship as you got in right relationship with yourself, as Lori got in right relationship with herself, etc. I wonder how that lands for you.
I think there's yeah, I'm trying to so it lands really well, and I'm trying to think of how that relates for me or how I see that playing out. I love figuring things out. Like I love kind of looking at, with pieces, anticipating the future, thinking about, I think I genuinely think about other people. When I'm doing that, when I'm kind of intentionally or manipulating things in order for it to fit the outcome that I think is best for me, is best for everyone else, there is such a control element that comes along with it.
Like a contraction, like a big energetic contraction.
Yeah. And I was never aware of it. I can feel it now when I start to do it, like in what it feels, it's in my chest and it's my heart closing. Like that's what it is. And and it still happens. I'm not past it or above it, but I can be more aware of it. The unfolding, I just think back to, or, I think of my kids right now and the lessons that they've learned in the unraveling of the marriage and the way that they've seen, the way that I experience them kind of view the world, view relationships, view love. Now, are they heartbroken that their parents aren't married like a lot of their friends? 100%. And they'll have their own work to do around that. That is a trauma for them in a lot of ways. And I have, I can feel some sadness around that, but also ownership and understanding. That's how it goes. That's kind of that's the agreement, whatever the premortal agreement that we made with our kids of like, hey, I'm going to fuck you up a little bit. But that's just kind of the way that it goes. Let's be messes together and figure it out. And, here we are now, like watching them unfold, especially I think Zoe, my 15-year-old, growth and perspective and wisdom that I'll say could have only come through this. And the only way I know that is because this is what was, and this is where they are. So I completely agree with that. I do think about people a lot when I try to control it or create the outcome that I think is best as opposed to allowing it to unfold, which can be messy and painful. That's where the beauty is. That's where, people are allowed to kind of fluidly get into spaces that they're being called to. And that's tricky as a parent.
Well, it makes me think about, my relationship with Taylor's dad has been, we're definitely not living the life that you're living. We're not co-living and doing all those types of things. But it definitely is like, it was the first relationship where I was like, oh, miracles can happen in relationships, because we hated each other. He threatened to kill me at times. I was legal battles, like boundaries, like all these things. And now it's like, if I was in a crisis, he's one of the first people I would call to like help me, and what I brought that up to say that one of the paths to that reconciliation was my 12-step work around resentment inventory. And in 12-step, you record all your resentments towards every person in your life. And him and my mom were like the top two. And it's just like everything I can't stand about you. And then you go through kind of a spiritual process and a reflection, and then also a part of like taking responsibility for like how you created it and how it's a projection of, your childhood and all these other wounds and things like that. And so there's something to me about right relationship and forgiveness, and right relationship and like your own availability, because these core partnerships are such projections of the, that's why we call these people in, because they're the closest in the projective field to like who we are and the work that we need to do. And so, yeah, I see how much suffering we create in those types of relationships, and how sad it is, because it's really the person we want to love the most at some point. At least at some point, it was the person we wanted to love the most. And more often than not, people feel just totally helpless and powerless over how much we start hurting each other.
I had a experience on Sunday that I didn't tell you about yet, Lauren, but it feels relevant. We had my oldest son's 9th birthday party, and we've done some birthday parties, like separate birthday parties. We've done a couple joint efforts on kid birthday parties. We haven't done many holidays together. It's been like divvied up kind of energy. But Jesse has a girlfriend that he's been seeing for a while, and she's got 2 kids that are Finn's age, Finn and Parker's ages, and so they're friends, and they hang out like every weekend now almost. And so, he wanted to invite them to the party, and so it's sort of like it became a party where not only were Jesse and I gonna pull the party together, as a team, but also that his girlfriend would be there and her kids. And that's a first. Like, we haven't spent time with anybody's people. And even just when he and I are around each other, there's a lot of tension. And I've been like wanting, but I guess not willing to co-create this for so long. And I was so happy to meet his girlfriend. She's so sweet and the kids are great. And actually her oldest daughter looks exactly like me. And we have like a weird something. And I just everything relaxed. I just felt so much joy. I almost cried a couple times just at being able to be. I mean, it felt like a transition moment, Lauren, in where you used to be with Taylor's dad to where you are now. It felt like we were there was this tangible transition moment that felt like it meant something. And so I was just so happy about it, and I had so much relief. So that was a couple days ago, so that feels really great.
I love that.
You were talking about, Gentzy, some exploration that it sounds like your whole family was doing about home and what home is. That kind of led to this. Can you say more about that?
Yeah. In 2016, is that right? 2015, Lori and I bought a house, and it was this 19th century mansion. It was 8,000 square feet. It was beautiful. It was, $900 a month heating bill, which I've got a whole story around that. And it was this gorgeous, it was home, and it had this big winding old staircase. And I'll never forget when Lori, she said, I can't wait to watch our girls walk down that staircase, in their wedding gowns. Oh. And I remember having I saw it, it was beautiful. And then I was just like, no. Nothing had begun at that point. The thought surprised me. The kind of the aversion to that. And I think for me, it was being tied to this physical location, this place, this house. And, that was kind of the beginning, and that was before the beginning of anything. We were still practicing Mormons at that point, and, that whole unraveling hadn't even begun. And you would think I'd arrived, this was home. This was the place where we would watch that, and we would create memories, and we would grow old and do the thing together. And, in the last year, especially with me kind of going back and forth between Chicago and Champaign, and friendships and relationships shifting for Lori in Champaign, and me living in this, 600 square foot apartment in Chicago that has become my sanctuary and kind of my place of healing, and the place where, Brennan became a man, and in high school, so much is built into it, but it's just a place. It's just a box. It's walls. And, home, home for me, and I think, and I don't want to speak for Lori, so I'll speak for me, but, we've had conversations, and I feel that we're aligned around this. Home is lots of different places. I'm going to Michigan next week, which for me has been home. There's a couple spots in Michigan that are sacred, and as soon as I walk in the door, I'm home. Or as soon as I go into that town, I'm home. I had that experience with Bend. I literally, as soon as I pulled into the town, I'm home. I felt that when my parents came up and visited me. Home is more about people. And I think that it's easy to define home. Home is usually synonymous with family. The definition of family has expanded. The notion of walls as home has expanded. And now it's, there's lots of places that can feel like home. And it's, it usually and it's fluid. The boundaries feel more permeable than they did before, both at the family level and at the physical location level. So I think that that's it. And as soon as that, like, I realized that, literally about 6 months ago, then it was okay. Anything goes. Who are the people? Where do we want to be? And then, things opened up.
It also seems like you've just become more adept at sourcing home from your own experience, whatever that means to you. So if it's a sense of familiarity or safety or connection or whatever home means to you and your like definition or experience of the world, it sounds like you're just getting really good at finding home in all these different types of moments and touch points and places and people. So it sounds like you're just expanding your internal homeness.
Yeah, that feels really true. And, and like, as I, like, even in this moment, as I think back, I've always kind of been like that. That feels really natural to me. I remember when my dad dropped me off for my freshman year of college in Idaho, and, and then he left and he drove back to Illinois. And I just remember feeling at home. I was 17 years old. I was living in Idaho. I'd never lived there. And I was surrounded by, I didn't know anybody. That's not true. I knew like 2 people. And it felt like home. Yeah.
You'd replace the word home with some other adjectives. So I know what your experience of it is. Is it comfort? Is it familiarity? Like, is it, like, what do you mean by it? Because I can imagine so many things. Safety. Mm-hmm.
Safety for me isn't without risk. It's not without, probably some danger, most definitely some messiness, but it's safe. It's part of what, like, where my heart like is breaking right now about leaving Chicago. Chicago has become home. And I have never felt so safe with a group of people. With absolute safety. And even the city, like, the city just feels safe to me. You could go to the newspapers or really dive into Chicago and be like, Chicago feels safe. Those people who don't live in Chicago, and like, yeah, it feels safe to me. So I think that's it. Yeah. Thank you for pushing on that. I think that's it. It's safety. Where do I feel safe?
So it's like the more well-practiced we get, and the more we have a reliable experience of sourcing our own safety, finding the place in us that can feel safe and can tether to that, it like opens up all of these expansive possibilities, because you don't feel so like, I remember, like, I went and did this internship in college. I deferred school for a while and went and did an internship at a record label in Seattle. And I was just like, going in, I was like, don't like it too much, because I can't be that far away from my family. Like, I was just like, I wouldn't even let myself like Seattle too much, because I didn't want to be like, have the tension of having to say, do I want to stay here and work here or go home? So I was just like, I can't do it. So I can just feel how much more possibility starts to open up for you when you are like well-practiced and sort of letting yourself feel safe wherever you are and being able to create that.
Yeah. And I think safety is like, it's a felt experience, right? And if I, in my mind, if I go, home looks like this, and it involves these people and this location and this security and this mortgage, none of those things are bad. And if I go, okay, what feels safe here? And I can feel into it, because I've been in situations where other people are like, they would say that felt completely safe to them and secure. Maybe within an organization or a big company, that feels safe to them. And that might not feel safe to me. And so, and trusting what is safety to me, and letting that dictate and like you said, expand options and possibilities, as opposed to, okay, this is what safety means and this is what I need to do to get there, and then once I'm there, I'll be safe. And I think that's what was so jarring about the Can't Wait to Watch the Girls come down the stairwell. It's just like, didn't feel safe to me.
Yeah.
There was nothing wrong with it. But it, you know, and maybe in that sense, it wasn't that it was safe, but it was just limiting. It was.
Yeah, it wasn't. My story is your body wasn't aligned to that. There's going to be this linear path, and it's all in this house, and we're all staying right here, and this is, you know, that something wasn't aligned, and you tuned into it.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, this is
Sounds
an interesting.
Like from there, you started blowing shit up and unwinding stuff. So.
Yeah, this is an interesting exploration for me. I've been thinking a lot about home this year, because I've lived in so many different places in 1 year. You know, technically I should be planning to go back to Chicago at some point, and I want to go back, but my apartment doesn't feel like my address anymore. Like, there's just this big, and I guess for me, it's actually that I'm reflecting that I had an absence of safety throughout my life, and that was normal. And so I don't know, I'm feeling contracted around this idea that because we source our safety from the inside, we're available for, I don't know, there's something I'm just processing out loud. But it's like, for me, I guess I'm moving the opposite direction. It's like, I just was never assumed that safety was an option, or being solid or supported was an option. And I created a life that looked like that. And now the more that I come back into my core and I feel like I'm at home in my body and in myself and on this planet, I actually want a home, you know, a physical space to represent that's reliable. And at the same time, I would say for me, people are home first, right? So I'm just really curious this conversation about home comes up in my constellation a lot, and people have such different ways that they define it and that they experience it. And I am in the limbo. Like, I don't know where I'll land in terms of that, physically, even where I will land.
Well, I notice there's a big nostalgic piece. Like, there's a piece for me, like living on the North Shore of Boston, there's something about like going to the fish fry place that my dad loved once a summer after we go to the beach in like Ipswich or Gloucester, that I have such a repeatable, enjoyable experience around. Like, even if that's 4 hours a year or something, like the fact that it's there and I can go to Woodman's and like think about my dad and be at one of his favorite places, like that might be an unnecessary tether. And maybe I'm not sourcing safety because I kind of want to stay around here. But another way to have that story is just like, I really like what I create for myself around here. And it does have a lot to do with like nostalgia and things that that are enjoyable from my life that I have repeated experiences around. So I don't
fucking supposed to be safe. Like, we're supposed this is my thing about sourcing your own safety approval. That's like a byproduct of a reality that we've created. That is not our natural state of being. Like, our natural state of being, in my opinion, is that like the womb experience, the birthing experience, the tribe experience, like all of those, the earth experience is like, oh, you're safe, you're held in this reality. And because that's such a separate thing that so many of us have, you know, that wasn't the experience of that, we're relearning and recreating that at 30 and 40 years old, you know, because it was missing. But I don't think it's like the highest. So I'm really attracted to people who believe they deserve safety and that need, right, and support, and these things that are like, and I can see the ways that I've created a life for so long that was like, I should be able to survive without safety, support, you know, touch, you know, these certain things. And I'm starting to think of it as like, it'd be like telling a plant, like, you know, you can make it out here. You don't source your own light, source your own water, like, and some plants can do that. It's not impossible, but it's not their highest, like most optimal state of being.
Yeah. Mm. Yeah. I love thinking about the womb. Yeah, that makes sense to me.
I'm still like part-time lobbying on Lauren's relocation plan for Beverly, Massachusetts.
It's like, of all places. Now I am gonna visit there. Who knows? But like Boston, just is like, of all the things on all the places on my list, like,
I'll be one of the first ones to be shocked by that, and not.
Her whole coven, like she basically has a shared living experience with like her friends in her community. I'm very attracted to that.
Yeah.
Mariko is here twice this week already. Mia's coming tonight.
And there's a part of me that's like I'm the kind of person, I'm like, that would be cool. What, like, yeah, every quarter? Yeah. I don't know. I'm like, I need a lot of privacy. There's something.
Gentzy, one of the things that you said earlier that I wanted to like double click on is you said what your like purpose is, like what your highest goal is, was around magical. Tell me if there's more words you use, but magical experiences for your family, magic and fun experiences. And was that what you said?
Yeah.
And we're friends on Instagram, and your Instagram stories with your kids. So Gentzy's a 7, and he's a fun guy, and he's always like, you know, there's always something cool going on and stuff. And, you know, I have my little 7 wings. So I'm always like paying attention. But the amount of fun you seem to have with your kids based on what gets reflected through kind of watching you digitally, that's another thing that feels like it's like a character trait or something like that. It's like, so I guess I can see some of the results of your commitment to magic, fun stuff with your family. And I think I DM'd you one time, like, it looks like you're raising a whole family of 7s or something, because everyone's just like lip syncing and doing shows and just like doing whatever crazy stuff. Like, tell me about how you've created that and what it feels like. Like, just tell me about like your relationship with your kids and your commitment to play.
Yeah. Well, they are just my favorite people. They are, they're just, I do have fun. And, you know, I'll go back to the Instagram thing. I haven't been on there since December. And, you know, part of the reason for me is.
And you've been missed.
Yeah.
You know, I'm a performer. I love to perform. And, you know, there's a way that I can perform, and it is kind of, I'm locked in and it's me kind of at my fun best. And then there's a way that I can perform where it's just like, attention, attention, attention. And like, look how fun, look how fun, look how fun. And, you know, I can sometimes blur that line on social media. And so part of it for me was just a fast of like, I'm just gonna, you know, stop. And, you know, the good check for me too was I'm still having a ton of fun without that performance element.
Without capturing it for the mass.
Yeah, exactly right. And, you know, in some ways, and you know, it's, I play for me is, that's where I feel the most alive. It's where I'm the best teacher to my kids. It's where we, you know, explore new ideas together. I love creating games with them. I love learning from them, you know. And yeah, I mean, I don't know what else to say about that other than I do love to have fun.
It comes naturally.
Yeah, it does. And it's, you know, it's me at my most present when it's just kind of locked in and, you know, having fun, whatever that might be. And it doesn't always have to be big things either. You know, it can be a movie night, and it can be making dinner. It can be other things. And I think those are some of the times when it's the play and the fun is the most meaningful, or maybe the connective tissue grows the strongest. Yeah. And it's fun to watch my kids play differently. You know, they're four different people and I play differently with them. But, you know, when we're all together, I mean, it's big.
I imagine a circus. Like I just imagine a circus, like just so many things going on.
There's a lot. Yeah, it's a lot. And it's it's a lot of energy.
With my kids, my stories, I don't think that it comes so naturally. I don't hold that really righteously. I do have fun with my kids, but I think like safety and intentionality and kindness, there's like a lot of stuff that comes super naturally to me as a mom that I prioritize, and like experiences and like play dates and family time. Like there's things like that. But the fun part has been something I've been trying to like evolve more intentionally in the last few years, I guess. But I like the times in my childhood that are like brilliantly burned into my brain of just euphoria is like massive games of kick the can with the neighborhood. And just like running until you're sweaty and like and there's mosquitoes and you're up past your bedtime and you're just kicking the can one more time and everyone runs. And like it can be so simple, but those, I mean, I feel like those experiences when I was young are so
like that's what they be doing in Boston is kicking the can.
Literally, I'm like trying to recreate kick the can. I'm like, everyone comes around the porch. Like there's so much that drives me that unconsciously drives me based on these fun experiences from when I was a kid. And I can probably only viscerally remember a few of them, but it's like they were shaped me. And like there's evidence of that, I think, all over the place. So yeah, what an invitation to like prioritize fun in your parenting experience.
Yeah. And you know, I'll can you see that jar of coins behind me?
Yes.
When kind of in that stage that Lauren was talking about where everything's coming unraveled for me, and you know, the apartment that I'm in now, like I had nothing. And part of that was you know, suffering. I felt the need to suffer for everything that I'd done. And you know, there was that's where I was, and I had very little money at that time. And you know, the divorce was happening, and so finances, you know, it was really hard. And you know, fun and magical experiences with the kids was still there, and they came up once, and I remember I was just a complete disaster. I was a wreck, and I had no money, and it was cold in Chicago, and I was like, ugh. I didn't have a TV, so like literally I've got this little top. It's actually a dreidel, and it's like this little wooden dreidel, and it was the one thing that I had in the house, and we'd like time it, we'd spin it and see who could time it, who could get it to go the longest. And it was like it was a Sunday afternoon. We played with the dreidel all we could. The kids were kind of, you know, everybody's a little bit antsy, and you know, I could kind of feel like this pressure of like, what fun are we gonna have? And I had no money, and I just got this idea of I wanted to make brownies. I didn't have anything in the house to make brownies. And it was at this time, like I didn't have like cash to go buy brownies. And I shut down all my credit cards to kind of get everything clear with the finances and divorce and figure out what that was. So I had access to nothing. You know, there were funds in places, but I couldn't access them then. And I went to my room and I started weeping. Like just crying of like I don't know how to do this, and I said, hey, I want to make brownies, but I don't have it quite figured out. And I had this jar of coins, and I had a label maker too. And sometimes the fun we would have is like making labels. And you can see this label maker. You can see on there it's 724 cents. So I'm in the room. I say this thing about brownies. I come out, and Ava, she must have been 6 at the time, was counting the coins in here and realized I had 724 cents. And loaded my pockets full. We all walked to the grocery store. I dumped them all in this coin changer that they had at the Jewel-Osco that's down the street from my house. I got the $7.24 box of brownies. I had oil. I think I had eggs. And we came back and we, made brownies. And it was, I keep it and still have 724 cents in here, which I replaced. But to me, I guess, long way of saying fun grounds me, play grounds me. And sometimes it's, and I do believe it can be created at all times. One of my favorite films is Life is Beautiful. I don't know if you remember this. It's the Italian film of the dad with the kid in the, they're in a concentration camp. And he basically, there's atrocities happening all around, and he knows what they are. And not only is he trying to shield his son from this, but he's also just trying to show him, like, we can play. Like, there's still beauty around us. There's still stuff that we can figure out. There's still games that we can play. And, there's a scene where he's marching off, for his end. And he's like, his son's like watching him. And he knows what's happening. Like, you can feel like these two parts of him, one deeply aware of what's happening in the seriousness of the situation. The other one, he just starts walking with his legs like this, like he's a clown and making a face at his son. And like, to me, that is like, it's so hard to access sometimes, I think, for all of us. And I still think it's available, and I recognize it that play is it's a gift of mine, and as such, it is something that just kind of brings me back home, to safety, to whatever it is, regardless of what's swirling around outside or inside me.
I think also, when you talked about highest commitments, I think one of and I think I've actually heard you say this, like one of your highest commitments are your kids, like over a primary relationship, maybe over a job. I don't know if that's true. Yeah. And that's part of why you're like moving to be near where your son's going to college, or willing to put other relationships at risk, because, as much as we talk about our kids or spend lots of resources on our kids, I would doubt that most people their kids are one of their highest commitments.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Over work, for sure. Over primary partnership. Over,
Yeah.
In fact, I feel like we're told that they shouldn't be. Like, you have to prioritize your primary relationship. You can't prioritize your kid. Blah blah blah. Like, there's actually these like cultural stories about not doing that.
I think it's a delicate balance for me. It really is, because Bethany, I think there's a lot of wisdom in that, of like,
it can get out of right relationship, right?
Yeah. And I have to be aware of that, because while I agree with everything that you said, Lauren, and that just feels, again, highest order commitment. It is easy for, it's easy for me to escape into them as well. And I have a partner now who sees that. There have been times where I'm like, I need to spend time with the kids, and she's like, is it you need alone time and time away from me, or is it you want to be with the kids? And I'm like, yeah, probably the former. And it's a good catch, and so I have to watch that and be aware of it. And I believe they can be the priority, and I can expand to these other areas of my life. And I think that's been a part of the unraveling for me, is to become aware of that, especially, being a dad, which I have been with the girls at a distance. So difficult in the beginning, and lots of shame of not being there day in and day out. So, I've had to reimagine it. And in that space, I think I have found, who am I independent? Who am I outside of this label of father, which is so sacred to me. And at the same time, it's not the only label or persona that I wear. There are others that are very, very important. But it feels like the most grounded and grounding of the roles that I play.
I think we've already started to touch into some of your healing magic and, you know, some of the stuff that has gone on in your life that you've been like experiencing and rolling through and working through. But what, just to ask plainly, because of the name of our podcast, like, what is your relationship to healing? What do you believe about it? And what's your experience been around it? What do you think about that word and what happens for you?
I've had lots of different thoughts on, you know, individual healing. And at times that's felt indulgent to me. It's felt unnecessary. You know, I've judged myself as like, I had a great childhood. I had this, I had that. Like, what do I need to heal from? You know, healing is for people who have been abused, or healing is for this. And, you know, and that was a way that I would really one up, one down, honestly, and kind of see myself as, you know, better than or privileged or whatever. And, you know, maybe there's some value in seeing things that way. But, you know, the more that I've become in touch with myself and I think really opened myself up to others, we all are in need of healing in one way or another. And we're healing from different things. And just like I said about the kids, of, you know, this agreement of, hey, we're going to come down to earth and I'm going to traumatize you. Mm-hmm. You know, we all have varying levels of what those experiences mean and how we metabolize them and how they show up later at different points in life. And so, you know, all of us need healing. You know, my mom was always really active in 12-step programs growing up. I have a brother who has had his own journey with addiction and beautifully walked that. And I, you know, as I watched, especially him doing, you know, his healing process, and then realizing my own healing that was needed and the value in being in a circle. I think it's, you know, 12 steps. People that are in those, you know, it's a group, and we can kind of look at it and be like, yeah, that's for the addicts. And like, I hope they get better. Like, come on, you can do it. And, you know, we're all something, and addiction is just something that you're healing from, and we're all healing from it. And to do so in groups, I think is, I think it's a necessity. And, you know, in the individual healing, and then if I'm committed to mine and then I come into contact or some collective, the healing of the collective is just going to be basically a consequence of individuals all committed to their individual healing. And it's not indulgent at all. In fact, it's the most selfless thing that we can do. And that's been a huge shift for me. Huge, massive shift. And I think I don't even feel like I'm articulating it all that well. I think because I'm still learning that, and I'm still unraveling lots of old stories that I had around healing and who needs to heal and what it looks like and how to do it. But that's how I think about healing now. And I think it's, I don't think you're like healed. Ta-da, like, yeah. I'm better, you know, and I think that's the beauty also of 12 steps of always honoring and accepting, yeah, I'm powerless over this thing, whatever this thing is. And that's my healing. And yeah, so as I think about that, and I said, to me, when I hear the two of you talk on this podcast, like, that's what you're doing. You're talking about your own healing process. It's individual. It's, you know, and yes, we're getting support and we feel safe from those around us, but in the process of you doing your own, that radiates outward and gives other people permission and the support to do theirs.
I think it's this idea of individual and group. Like, I'm even noticing it with clients, like when I'm coaching them, that they just hit a place where they could just cycle in that place for a very long time without adding the layer of a group. And the other way, where we have some clients, Bethany and I both, where we worked with them a long time individually and we're like, wow, you know, and then they get in the group and we're like, whoa, it's like a whole different, you know, like, and you just realize like the kind of, which at the end of the day to me is just a fractal of the role of relationships in our, you know, expansion in the game. And sometimes I've been playing with like interchanging evolution with healing. And that if it's just us evolving, then like these groups, these other beings, these other reflections of light back to us are really essential to our ability to evolve.
I love that, because if you think about evolution, like at an animal level, they're just reacting to the things around them, and they're learning from those around them, and then they're making the changes that they need in order to survive. I love that.
And their DNA is changing. You know what I mean? They're changing it. There's like an alchemical change of who they are that's developing in a direction that's more aligned to what's going to allow the species to survive, But what it looks like in the group, like I've been in groups with you, right? It looks like everybody triggering the fuck out of each other. And hopefully you have a good facilitator, or like in 12-step, you would have like principles and guiding routines. And so you have things to like support that to become evolutionary versus maybe chaos.
Oh, I love it.
Well, and animals don't really get traumatized for the most part. So their nervous systems, like they haven't socialized themselves out of the way that our nervous systems process scares and trauma. And so like they shake stuff off, they let stuff move through, like they do different stuff than we do, because we've like trained ourselves out of a lot of impulse, like natural body instinctual impulse and stuff. And I wonder about that evolution, like how do we evolve into that more? Like how do we evolve more capacity? How do we evolve to be able to be with our body experience in a way that's friendlier, where when something happens, it's not a lasting impact in the same way? That sounds exciting to me. And the other thing that you said, Gentzy, that sounds so simple, but I don't think I've ever thought about healing this way, is you said, like whatever we've given our power over to, basically. And the process of healing that up is like taking your power back almost. And like, I think I heard basically some stuff about the human condition where we give our power away, and healing could be reclaiming your power. And I haven't thought about it that way, but I really like thinking about it that way. I'm curious what Lauren thinks about that.
Well, the thought I'm having is like, what if that, like my whole metaphor that it's a video game, like what if that's the whole game?
So
like, what if that, what the literally thing is like, you come here, you lose your power, and you get to spend a whole bunch of time finding the power, like Super Mario Brothers or something, like, and how does that change our relationship too? Because it always blows my mind that there's people like those stories about, what I'm doing is not really healing, and like that's just so out of my orientation. Those are thoughts I would never have. So I'm always like, because Brad said something similar, like, wow, there's people that actually think healing is this thing that only certain people should have the right to do or something. But it's like, that would just blow up the whole paradigm if it was just like, well, that's the whole deal. That in your treasure hunt, it's your treasure hunt, like the alchemist, that's what you're looking for.
Well, and destigmatizing it too. Like, being playful, like we're talking about, like injecting some play into your path and your experience.
And I'm learning, isn't there something in astrology that around like your 40th birthday, there's something that happens, like, and I want to say that it's similar to like, that's when you start getting your power, like you start finding your power.
Well, there's Drew is going to have to check me on this, but every 13 years, there's a pattern with your Saturn, which is like lessons. So at 39 years, there's like a lot of completion that's happening around that. I think
that's true. This is our 39th year.
Yeah, we're about to kick off 39, Lauren and I, in a couple of weeks. So it's like, I think the idea is you start integrating the lessons in such a way that it's friendly. You're not like learning it for the first time. You like know about it, and you start getting better at integrating stuff. Yeah.
Amazing.
Well, I just think that the thing about astrology now is like, there's these moments in our timelines that They were always going to happen around that time. So as much as I thought that I was working my ass off to heal and like learn all these things, like regardless, when I was 39, like things were going to integrate. Now, you know, not to say that those lessons or those tools or whatever didn't help me like level up my awareness in some way, but I'm like, you know, like the healing is going to happen in a timeline that's already predestined to a certain degree.
Yeah. I can't quite move past this, you know, healing is evolution thing. You know, it's also evolution is not, it's not an intentional process. Like it happens as, and, you know, there's got to be some parallel there too with the unfolding and allowing the unfolding and the unraveling to occur. While you were talking, I was reminded of something else. I was in medicine space recently, just a couple of weeks ago with a currently practicing Mormon, and about an hour and a half in, he sat up rigid and said, "I am the Christ." And he got this big smile on his face, and then he laid back down and kind of got back into it. But it was this whole kind of recognition, I think, of everything that we're talking about in terms of healing, of, you know, especially within a Christian paradigm of, you know, put your sins on Christ, he will make you whole, all of this stuff. There's beauty in that. But there's also a lot of bypass. There's a lot of this, there's a lot of that. And, you know, the three of us could go on and talk about that for the next 14 hours, but we won't. And, but for him to kind of come to that realization, and then there to be a piece of, you know, I am the Christ. Christ is, put it upon Christ, put it upon me, my healing, my crucifixion, my resurrection, you know, on and on. And it was just, you know, I could see things kind of clicking together in his mind in new ways, that were beautiful, and using kind of some of the same language, the same structure that's there, where that's nothing wrong with any of that, but just the way that it gets allocated sometimes can get obviously a little bit confused. And then you come back to this, those concepts are really great, just fit the puzzle pieces in this way.
He got on those oneness vibes.
What's that?
He got on those oneness vibes, and he just used the language, you know, it was like in the language and the framework that was familiar.
Well, I actually think there are people, I think Christ consciousness is a dimension of reality that people are channeling, just like somebody would say, I'm a Pleiadian, or I'm a, you know what I mean? Like, I think Christ consciousness is a dimension, not just a structure.
Pleiadian.
What'd you say?
What is a Pleiadian?
Alien.
Oh.
No, it's a star seed. It's a
say alien. She's
the same.
Potato.
I mean, in the idea of Pleiadians, they were, I guess, aliens on a star, but like their consciousness has evolved to a place that they are only consciousness. Now they are not, but they have like if you Google it, like people just channel and they'll channel like, and it's a common thing that they are Pleiadians and coming from Pleiades. And
is this what you talk about when you talk on the phone?
She's talking about her boyfriend. No, we talked about like the DNA restructuring and like protecting Black bodies, and
like, have fun. You know where you land. Give me the cliff notes.
But yeah, the Christ consciousness thing, I think I've seen people in medicine space like go there, and that was the experience I had, was like, they're actually channeling something. That's why they resonate so deeply with, and that religion is so widespread, because I think that paradigm of existence like came here and did a lot of work here. I think now we're seeing like it's getting really common for people to be connected to being like a starseed. I think there's a whole another set of structures or religion that that's coming forward now because of what's being like channeled through the human consciousness and into bodies.
Well, and we like astrology is so much more accessible, and straight up, the CIA is like, yeah, aliens. Like, it was just like a part of the news cycle this year that no one really made a big deal about, but they're like 100%, yeah, aliens. Mm-hmm. And so, I mean, it's not outlandish at this point to be talking about Pleiadians, star seeds and stuff. I mean, it's like.
Well, and this is a little tangential, but I wanted to push a little bit, Gentzy, about like that evolution is not intentional. I'm like, that's a very three-dimensional bias, I guess. I'm like, what if it's actually like exceptionally, I experience evolution as exceptionally intentional. And what I mean is that, like, so even if we look at like an individual human, I think that I'm calculating all these thoughts and making all these decisions that lead to then, so if we use the animal that you gave an example, right? Like they're learning from their environment and they're adjusting. And we assume that's just them interacting with the environment that then is creating the change. But the experience I'm having, even as in my human body, is like every time a planet shifts and the constellations are different, I'm having a different alchemical reaction. I'm aware of different things. I'm having different thoughts based on like even the astrological weather of what's occurring. And that there's some kind of like perfect calculation process that is moving me somewhere all the time and knows ahead, is like ahead of me in a way that like is calculating the highest optimal experience. And if the universe is expanding, it makes sense to me that like as we are just one piece of that expansion and that, you know, energetic like speeding up that's happening, that we're all just like experiencing the evolution of the universe in this like individuated way that we can watch and be aware and explore around. But yeah, I think it's exceptionally intentional beyond our wildest imagination.
That makes sense. Yeah, I guess I was thinking of intentional at kind of the organism level. But when you know, and you know, I won't pretend to know kind of the mystical realm as well as you do. I love it when you go there. I notice when I hear you talk like that, I don't even feel like I can contribute to it, but it feels like truth to me. You know, there's I think my rational, logical brain wants to go like, and I just have to, what's that feel like? Feels like truth. Yeah. So I buy it.
Well, I guess the reason I'm bringing it up, because it changes like how we look at healing as evolution, right? Because one focus, if we use the connotation of evolution that we know through biology or something like that, then your personal evolution, your personal healing is very much up to you, right? And then very much up to this like generational process that you imagine is happening in your bloodline over time, which is probably is also a truth. But then this other direction that I'm pointing to is like, if there's a perfect calculation happening all the time because the universe is always moving in service of its highest evolution, and what is really mine to do around my healing?
I just feel like different frameworks are like helpful for different people depending on where they're at, and like what makes sense. And I mean, I'm even thinking about like what you're saying. I can almost hear it all. Like my brain will fuzz out a little bit and I'll actually lose track of what you're talking about sometimes. And I think that's just like what I'm available for still. And that capacity has been growing for me to even track and experience, like thinking about that kind of stuff. But even just like, kind of like with even some of the CLG model stuff, like I think there's a way where depending on where you're at, like, you know, creating really clear boundaries could be like really important for you. And then there's another way where like not having any boundaries and being available for anything to happen. I just think all the different ways we think about individualism versus collectivism, like different levels of consciousness and different dimensions versus like, the non-duality of things. Like, I think it just, all that really matters, if what Lauren says resonates, fucking great. And if being like thinking about things in a more stepped approach that's more focused on your individual experience, if that's what resonates and makes more, is more compelling, I think that's great too. And then we all get to like change directions and take on new structures and concepts whenever we want to too. You know what I mean? Like,
what I kind of latched onto there is, in conversations like this, and even just thinking about healing, all I know is how little I know.
Yeah.
Like that's kind of what comes up for me. And I love to know shit. Like I just, I do. I love to prove that I know shit. I got a PhD, so I can be like, I know shit. Like I know so much shit. And, the reality is I don't. And when it comes to healing, if you look at everything in the past 5 years, big things for me, moving to Chicago, leaving Mormonism, affair, outside sexual relationship outside of my marriage, divorce, living in a separate town from my girls, living with my son and watching him go to an inner city Chicago school. There are these things that I never would have picked or imagined as for me or for my healing. And in fact, most of them feel damaging. And now as I look back and I think about the healing that has occurred, it could have been accomplished in different ways, but it wasn't. And so this was perfect. And I never would have guessed that. I never would have known that. Even to hear myself say that right now, I want to be like, sure, like that still seems a little crazy and dangerous and harmful. And yet, like, here I am.
And I think if people don't have that experience of something really challenging feeling for us or supportive, you can't really convince somebody of that. You can't tell somebody, yeah, like these really hard things, it's for you. The universe is for you. And like we recorded a podcast last week and someone was like, no, some stuff's bad and it's just hard. And it's like, I don't think even that, I think that feels true over here. And we've kind of spent a lot of time in similar ideologies, and probably have similar mindsets in certain ways. So even the people who are like, nope, some stuff's bad and it is not friendly for me and it is not healing, and no, I wish it didn't happen, and I, like that all gets to be here too. Like everyone gets to have their experience around it, and yeah, despite my beliefs and despite how true something can feel for me, it doesn't mean it feels true for anybody else.
Yeah, and I think those things can exist simultaneously.
Yeah, well, every single podcast, we basically boil it down to some paradox, and that's why our tagline is the paradox of healing, because every single time when you have these types of conversations, you get down to how can we hold more than one thing being true at the same time, and like what's our capacity for holding that? It comes up a lot around healing.
Yeah, I notice resistance, like, I mean, not to what you're saying, but just like I like in my body, it's like there is a capital T truth that the universe is for us. I think, and I'm like, to what degree would I be willing to argue with that? To what degree would I be willing to test that? But like, I guess for me, it's like, even though you can't convince people or whatever it may be, like, I would argue that in any person's journey who has any intentionality around growth at all, there is some kind of turning point where releasing control is required and stepping into the unknown. And that unknown space is where you find out the difference between what you think you know or what you think you believe, and like, what do I know to be true? Like, what am I going to reliably trust and like stand on? And like, to me, your life is an example of, I lost control and something else, some other, and not like it was one thing, but a conglomeration of things that I never could have imagined, a field of infinite possibilities, reorganized my life in the most adventurous, strange, dynamic way that I can see was perfect, which is the word you used. And it felt, the experience I had in my human body going through that, like at least what it feels like to me is somebody threw me in like a washing machine, and like pulled me back out. But there's just like some of the threads that are consistent, even in talking to every single person about their healing. It's like most people look back on their healing journey in a way that they appreciate it, and they see it was for them and it was necessary, and it was even like organized, in a way that they couldn't have imagined. So that feels important to me to stamp.
As we start to get ready to come in for a landing, Gentzy, I'm wondering if there's we did talk about the collective when you answered the question about your individual experience around healing, but I'm just wondering if there's some other stuff that you want to say or that you would want people to know about what your experience or your journey's been, or if there's discussion topics, if there's other things that you want to make sure you bring up.
We didn't talk about partnership. I just want to say that, guy.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, we went to aliens.
This is my story is that the three of us since we've met each other, have been on some kind of similar paths in terms of especially the two of you specifically being married, but exploring dating and sex and love and all the constructs and the compulsions. It's all three of us have kind of been on that in a little bit. And so I'm just curious, Gentzy, I haven't talked to you in a while about this, even your exploration in your more recent relationship. I'm just curious what you're learning, and I don't want to use true as a capital T, but what are you learning or coming to believe is true about that type of relationship, as a result of the last 5 to 6 years?
I feel like I am still unpacking this one I feel like I can wax eloquent on other pieces. On relationship, I still feel like there's healing still to be done there, for me, and maybe forever, but I still feel really in it. I still feel very scared by the prospect of relationship, getting lost in relationship. I think the thing that I've learned in the relationship that I'm in now is I can state my wants. I can openly receive conflict and anger. I can ask for alone time without it being, and Bethany and I were talking about this at the beginning, without it being an assault on the other person or a rejection. I can trust and be okay with the fact that I don't know what things will look like 6, 12, 18 months down the road. My Mormon tradition, you got married for eternity. Literally, in the Mormon temple, you kneel across from another person. And
that's what I love about Mormons. Now, they are some fucking aliens. That shit came from some aliens for sure. And they don't even hide it. They're like, we got a gold tablet on a hill.
Yeah. And I mean, Kolob is what Joseph Smith called heaven, and he said it's this sphere that sticks off invisible off of the planet.
Is that in a Bible? Is that in a Mormon Bible?
The teachings of Joseph Smith. So, Joseph Smith, lots of controversy there. In terms of being an alien philosopher, he absolutely was. This is why he was able to kind of be totally at peace with polygamy. I'm just what's the big deal? He was out of his mind, but there were things, it was very alien. And, that to go to what I was just discussing, in the Mormon temple, you kneel at an altar and there's an infinity mirror behind you and your spouse, and you see reflections of one another forever. And so, my framework for marriage, for even relationship, is eternity.
Fuck. No wonder. No wonder you're.
So if you think I'm unpacking that shit in 5 years, like no way. Like
I'm real comfortable with medium-term commitment. Like I'm like, yeah, let's go out for a few years. Yeah. But you get out further, I'm like, I don't.
Yeah, and like I'm getting to become, more at peace with that. I even for this Valentine's Day, I told Kristen, I said, "You're my forever Valentine for the foreseeable future." And I picked it up from Ryan Reynolds, who said the same thing to Blake Lively. So I can't take credit for it, but to me, it just like captured perfectly. Like this is what I've got, and the beauty in that is, as foreign as that feels to me, and it's still like I can make that wrong so quickly, my whole system settles. My whole fucking system.
Well, what would you say to Lori? So if your partner is forever Valentine for the foreseeable future, well, Lori is sibling partner for the rest of my life?
That's a great question. I don't know. Like right now,
I know you don't know, but I'm just saying, like, does it resonate more? Like, is it easier to see yourself doing what you're doing with Lori until you die?
Oh my God, such a good question. Yeah, wow. I hadn't even thought about it like that. Yeah, I mean that still feels to me like the most, in addition to the kids, and maybe it is the bond of the kids. Like that's the stickiness of, yeah, that's a relationship forever. In the form that it is, and maybe it will evolve and change, and I anticipate that it probably will. Yeah, that's a great catch. Yes.
Well, I think I hear you saying that you've healed up some codependency, or at least when I'm listening to your words and applying it to my experience, that's the story I tell myself about my experience. Because there's a way where I wanted my ex-boyfriend to say, I wanted him to just say stuff like, I'm not going to break up with you, and we're going to be together and we'll always be friends, and we will always be close no matter what, even though I know that like anything can happen. And I know even myself that I change my mind about shit, but like, I wanted him to say those things. And in the attachment world, those are like attachment statements. Like they're things you say to your kid, like, I'm always going to be your mom. They're things that you say developmentally that start to create some of that safety that Lauren is talking about, how she didn't have that experience. And so I think in a vacuum of that, we really try to pull it in, and stuff like taking space or conflict feels so threatening, feels so unfriendly and threatening, like we can't be with that. And I don't know, for me, it was like this, I just, for whatever reason, picked the perfect partner to like deconstruct all of that. And it felt like shit for like 2 years.
But also, I mean, the reason I asked the question about Lori is because it is obvious to me that without question, that you're going to, like, it's just an energetic knowing that you're just tied together. And it's not a question, but also what I really see this more in people who've been married. Like I've had lots of painful, but it seems like people who've been married more than other people, like there's this deep, like an unmistakable heartbreak. I see it in both of you, that it's like the possibility of ever doing that again or whatever it meant is so like deep that you're having to like really tiptoe back into anything that looks or feels or sounds or could, you know what I mean? Like, and I have not made the choice. I have not made a choice, and I'm always like so curious. Like, I'm like, this marriage thing is like something else because, I don't know. There's just
making
something.
Promises. You're making vows. And so for me to be, it's like a lack of trust in myself a little bit, because so to say, for the rest of this life, I'm going to be married to you through all these different things. And we have all the things we say, and thick and thin, and sickness and health. And then to not
that lack of trust, that's what it feels like. I don't trust myself to know.
To be able to know how I'm going to feel in 10 years about that. And to know if that's still what I'm going to be committed to.
Well, yeah.
That's so good. I mean, when you said tiptoeing back into a relationship, like that's what it feels like. I mean, again, to go back to the Mormon thing, and Bethany, even without the Mormon structure, I think you believed more or less the same thing of this is what I thought it was going to be.
Mm-hmm.
And then the unimaginable happened.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, fuck. Like it's that susceptible. It's that fragile. I was able to convince myself of something. And so I think that's where,
Yeah. We're really good at self-deception.
Totally.
And
go ahead.
And
I'm getting that thing where I'm like,
well, and we're changing so rapidly all the time. Like this, like.
But this is my thing. But here's my thing. Like what I experienced, and there's another level of hard. It's just different. Like I energetically know without a doubt the people who are going to be around forever. Like I could say with 90% certainty that like until I'm just pretty old. I feel like for Gentzy, I feel like I'll be able to call you. We'll probably talk a couple times a year for like the next 15 to 15 years. And then it may taper off because our lives will go in a different direction. Bethany, I'm pretty sure till like 60, we're going to be down. Like, and I'm not scared about that. And I'm not like, oh, maybe I shouldn't be friends with you because like, that might change and whatever. But the way that it's harder is because like my best friend, Jonathan, or these other different people is like the level of the energetic commitment, like showing up for all the different versions of that person and showing up to the energetic commitment that I have with them. Like that is actually really hard. But the part of me that's like, do I know if I'm going to be involved with that person? Like that part, I don't, it's like, yes, I know.
And if it was like, do you want to take a vow of friendship? Can you feel how it feels different? It doesn't feel the same flow and freedom to be like, I vow, Lauren, that we are going to talk once a week and do podcasts over 60 or something. Like I notice a big constriction. I feel that way too. And I can feel where I think there's a lot of alignment and something about
But if I'm like, I'm committed to loving you exactly as you are for the next 30 years, like when I feel into that, yes. Mm-hmm. Like, yes. And am I committed to like learning whatever that teaches me around that? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And all the other agreements like are flexible and I think this is all maturity or whatever, but as I get older, I'm like, I can't fucking keep that commitment with like 10 people. Mm-hmm. I've got like 3 or 4 people like that I hold close and my son and then my family, and then I'm out. Like sometimes I even draw it. I'm like, who energetically is in the middle? Because I got to remember when I get all pulled away, like, no, that's where your home energetic
is. That's where your home is, Lauren.
Yeah.
You said, yeah, like, no.
No, it is yes. And there are a few people in that circle that have adjusted. And then there's mm-hmm. And like but the way that I relate to what you're saying is like my attachment, my relationship with Heyman to like, you're going to be my sexual partner who does life with me, who I'm with all the time, who we share a house with, like ripping that apart because of how much I wanted that to be true with that person. But like the complicated thing for me is I know that we're going to be friends till I die. Like I know without a doubt that our connection is, and it's actually harder because I'm like, fuck, I can't just like, I mean, I could, but I'm not going to just not talk to you for 2 years. Like, that's just not the way it's going to occur over
and
here.
As much as I'll report on not trusting myself because I changed my mind and I say these things, I am in a deep experience of learning to trust myself more. I feel little things like little misalignments. I'm aware of them. Like my level of awareness about such things, or even just my level of self-awareness about myself when I got married. I mean, it's like you wouldn't know that person. Like you wouldn't even be able to identify. So I do know what you're talking about. And I do feel that magic with a lot of people that are close to me. And so, yeah, they're both true. And I'm not totally shifted out. I just still scare myself, especially around primary partnerships.
Yeah. And it feels sad. I feel sad when I feel how scared I can feel how scared both of you are, and like how much there's like a deep doubt, like, and I can feel the part that doesn't doubt too, but at the core, I could just feel this, like, I really doubt if I can do this. And I think I'm just going to hurt you, and I might just fuck this up again. And I just don't know if,
yeah,
no,
that feels very true. And I can like try to fix that or be like, okay, that's something to work on. And I'll never forget when, I don't know if you've heard this, when Byron Katie, she's married now. And it was just like, why'd you get married? You remember her response?
No, I don't, but I do think it's so awkward. She's married.
So awkward. Like, her of all people. And that's why the question was posed. Like, why the fuck are you married? Like, right. Divorces, like nothing is real. Like, why are you married? And she was like,
right. It's all a story anyway.
Yeah. She's like, I couldn't come up with any reasons why not to.
I thought it was something along the lines of he asked, Yeah,
it was basically that of just like, well, I basically deconstructed everything. Everything, was meaningless. And so here was this thing that I could just do. And I just did it. I love this person. I know that feels real. And there was this thing that I could do, and I could do it. That to me, Byron Katie's talk about aliens, but there's also something kind of beautiful in that too. And that feels just like, we could call it surrender. We could call it enlightenment. I don't know. It's just like, yeah, there's this person. And maybe to what you're saying, Lauren, I knew I was going to be with him forever until I die. And so I said, let's do this thing called marriage. I don't know. I think I hope that there is I hope for that for me. Yeah.
Well, the thought I just had was like you talked about family and home being permeable, and like, could your relationship and your definition to marriage and that relationship be more, and I'm sure it's a yes, but I imagine that life is taking you to a place where even that is more permeable.
It feels that way. And that gets super scary for me, because that is like that's like, similar to what you were saying at the beginning, Lauren, of, I thought last year, I thought I was like, all right, I've unraveled. And then like, whoa, here I go again. It turns out I'm a wind-up toy.
Right. I'm like, is this being aware of your evolution? And is this like what we have in store until we die, is just to like ride the roller coaster of evolution? And like,
yeah. I think, there does feel like there's a lot more to unravel. And honestly, like, I feel like healing awaits. Like, as I make this move across the country, with Lori, with the kids, with Kristen, I move in with her. I leave like my tiny little 600 square foot box and, move into a beautiful 3-story townhome on the river. Like even as I say that, I can it feels like too much. And like, it feels like there's healing that's awaiting. And I don't know how that's all going to play out.
And you're a lot more prepared to walk into the not knowing.
Totally. Yeah.
Or like, because it's like, oh, this is what life is now. It's the next not knowing.
Yeah, and still scary. It's like, I know that this is the way that it goes. I know the beauty that comes out of the not knowing and watching it all unravel, and that doesn't make it any less scary for
me. Yeah. Even Diana said that on the podcast. I said, even Diana, like, because we know I put her in a place where like she doesn't get scared of the unknown. But she was talking about a couple of things where she's like, I still feel that. I still feel that in my body. I still have to move through my experience. Like, every time
stuff like
or every time someone gives me feedback or they say like, are you available for feedback? I can still feel that thing in my body. Like we never stop kind of bracing around change or something that we can't predict. Well, it's so great to be with you. What's the actual move day?
So you're coming, right? To Chicago?
Yeah, I'm coming next weekend. Yeah, I'm going to Gentzy's going away party. And then the next week I'm going to be with Bethany for our birthday.
Aw, fun.
for our birthday.
I was with Kimbo last night. He said you're gonna stay with them while you're there.
Mm-hmm.
Love that.
Those places is a nice place to stay.
Yeah.
That was a good experience to have in Chicago. Dan Kimbo said.
Party's there. So I'll be in Frankfurt with Jim and Tim next week. And then I come back on Thursday. That party's Saturday. Truck gets loaded up Tuesday. Hit the road Friday. Clay's driving with me and Kristen.
Oh no, that is a mess.
I called him today and just kind of go over some details, and it became ridiculous within 30 seconds. And I was like, "We're gonna do this for 30 hours." He's like, "I'm gonna film the whole thing."
Oh my god! Are you a 1560 coach right now?
Yeah, I do some stuff with 1560.
Oh, cool.
Yep. So we're gonna go out, and then so we'll get there by August 2nd.
Cool.
What are you living in? A house, an apartment? What's the living?
Yeah, it's a townhome. So people on this side, and then we have this side.
And then Lori's how far from you?
2.5 miles.
Wow.
And she has a boyfriend.
He's coming.
Did he go out there?
She met him in Bend.
Wow.
Oh.
She met him.
She just goes for it, man.
He really does. I gotta say, this guy's great.
He is.
I mean, we were out there over the 4th of July for Hazel's birthday. So Kristen and I were both out there when we took the car, and she was like, "Can Daniel come over?" And so Lori's mom's there, Daniel's there, Kristen's there, and then Mark Hudson, his brother, lives in Bend.
Oh.
I was like, "Hey, having this crazy party of you want to come?" And he's like, "That feels weird and probably everything I need right now." And so he was there, and Lori's mom was just kind of I saw her a couple times. She's just looking around, and I went up to her and I was like, "What do you think about all this?" And this is actually a good note to end on. Probably, I said, "What do you think about all of this?" And she goes, "I don't understand it, and I love it."
It's like a relationship melting pot.
Yeah, it really is.
I love it too.
Yeah, feels
Thank
good.
you for bringing that version of a reality into my life and whoever listens to this pod too, because I think that's lots of possibilities,
Lots of possibilities.
Yeah, for Taylin's 8th grade graduation, it was me, Tim's partner, Heyman, who we're not together, but he was there. My mom was there. Taylin's best friend. I was just having this moment wow, life is so interesting.
So interesting.
All
right, you two.
Thanks for being
Love
with
y'all.
us.
Thank you.
Bye.
Hey everybody, if you've got any feedback for us, we welcome it, or ideas about future guests, email us at healingcollectivepod@gmail.com. Our website is thehealingcollectivepodcast.com. We are at Healing Podcast on Twitter, and we are at Healing Collective Podcast on Instagram. Special thanks to Monda Creative, who edits all of our podcasts, and Two Tall Women Productions, who produce. Thank you.